Dark Souls 2 will surprise you. As I played through the game, I came across some really terrifying environments, filled with enemies that will give you the deaths you didn't expect. There are characters who can't be trusted, and there are even some bosses who seek you out and hunt you down, instead of the other way around. There are just so many moments where your heart will start to beat faster and you feel like you're completely immersed in this game. This is the feeling of a first playthrough that we haven't had since the original Dark Souls, and we're finally going to have it again. But when I say that Dark Souls 2 will surprise you, I'm not just talking about the exciting gameplay. No, all I mean is that it's just not the same game Dark Souls was, and that's what we're going to talk about today. A thing you mightn't expect from a Souls game is that Dark Souls 2 is accessible. The basic story is explained to you in the first few hours, you can go in any direction you want, and how to play is explained to you really well. New players can pick this up without fear. But this doesn't mean that Dark Souls 2 is easy, and that's the other thing, it's no easier than the first game. All I mean by accessible is that the game will get you hooked in the first few hours of playing, whereas the first Dark Souls turned a lot of people away, not just because it was difficult, but because it was difficult to understand. Speaking of difficulty, there's multiple ways to make the game harder, and these aren't things like a difficulty slider. No, these are challenge modes built into the actual gameplay. Pray at this victor's stone and the world will try harder to kill you. Throw this in the bonfire and enemies will become more lethal. The benefits of a more difficult playthrough aren't immediately obvious, but the most hardcore players will reap the rewards. I also mentioned being able to go in any direction you want, and that's true. Dark Souls 2 doesn't shepherd you in any one direction. In fact, it almost encourages you to go down a completely different path every time you defeat a boss. You can now quick travel to sections of the game you haven't conquered yet, and this keeps everything in the game feeling fresh. So when you pick up Dark Souls 2, expect some amazing surprises. I'll see you guys next time. So if you're watching this, then you're probably wondering about that title. Because if you've heard any one thing about Dark Souls, it's that it's crushingly difficult. But the Souls games are more than just difficulty. I'm willing to bet that Dark Souls 2 will be an experience that will stick with you through all your years of gaming. And I believe